أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين وأصحابه المنتجبين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us once again to witness this blessed month of Muharram and through the remembrance of our blessed Imam Hussein to review our faith and to re-establish that firm connection with our Creator and our Maker and find a sense of substantive life, a purpose and a meaning that is so needed, and to remind ourselves, even if we have found it, and to refresh it so that we may live from this moment onwards very meaningfully and not wastefully. Now, Islam, when it came to the pagans, it reformed them and it transformed them. They understood the worth of the verses that were being revealed to them. The same verses today that have lost their potency, for them were very strong. They were changing those people. When Najashi asked Ja'far, what is the message that this messenger in Arabia has brought? He said, "Oh, great king, we were people who were lawless. We did not value life or rights of each other. We consumed the wealth of orphans. We did not respect our parents. We were dirty, nomadic people. We ate dead bodies. Might was the rule of the day. We ruled by the sword. Bloodshed was our culture. We had no sense of honoring oaths or fulfilling our pledges or promises. There was no notion of speaking the truth. In fact, there was no motive. There was no objective worthy for us to live for. We just lived by the day." He came, he told us, instead of being so superstitious, worshipping so many gods, being so scattered within your minds, having no direction, worship one God. Cut away from it all. Have confidence in yourself. Of course, I paraphrase Ja'far, but I need to say this in order for us to understand how the Quran was working in their minds. Take the reins of your destiny in your own hands. Care for the orphans. Be truthful in your speech. Fulfill your pacts. Be true to them. Take care of your parents. Do not eat filthy flesh. Be clean people. He has reformed us, taught us how to be moral people. He has spiritually aligned us with God. And that is what this prophet has done for us. Now you can see, when the Quran went to them, it actually intrigued them. It incited their minds into thinking. These verses that are so simple for us today, for them, they were something quite phenomenal. Iqra, bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. Read, by the name of your Lord, the one who has created man from a clot. He taught man by the pen. He taught man what man knew not. Immediately, the way in which these verses were constructed was so profound, so eloquent. It struck at their minds and at their hearts. And at the same time, it was telling them that the Quran is coming from the Lord who is teaching you, who is educating you, giving you a new perspective. Look at these simple verses that go unnoticed by us, and we want to explore why. Look at the verses of Surah Rahman. These were recited as they were revealed. The Sahaba of the Prophet would go into the streets of Makkah where people would be transacting and they would recite these verses. Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. Ar-Rahman, the one who has taught the Quran. He created mankind and he gave him bayan, eloquence in the ability to speak. Ash-Shamsu wal-Qamaru bihusban. The sun and the moon are in their precisions, precise orbits, proper fixed numbers and durations. Was-sama was-shajru wal-najmu was-shajru yasjudan. And the star and the tree are both in prostration. Was-sama rafa'aha wa-wada'a al-mizan. And the sky, he has elevated it and placed a scale. Ala tatghaw fil mizan. Do not transgress upon the scales. And these people were transacting. وَقِيمُوا الْوَزْنَ بِالْقِسْطِ وَلَا تُخْسِرُوا الْمِيزَانِ. And establish the weight through justice and do not deceive anyone in the scales. Immediately, it's talking about the Rahman. It's talking about the heavens and the earth. It's talking about the meticulous way in which God has created. It's talking about the cosmic balance. And in the marketplace, it is telling the people, be mindful of the scale. Do not transgress the scale. Do not cheat anybody of their rightful due. It was phenomenal experience by these people. What are these magical words? They go straight in. And the way in which the Sahaba recited it was utmost effective. The potency. Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran. Imagine an Arab with that deep voice of theirs speaking these verses. They are bound to strike upon the heart, especially for people who know Arabic. Even those who don't know Arabic, they will stand in amazement at the rhythmic way in which the words make sounds. And then immediately a moral message comes into the marketplace where people understand that they are suffering from dishonest transactions. And here is God who is telling you that everything is in a state of balance. Keep the balance and do not transgress the balance. This Quran transformed them fully, made them into moral people, spiritually aligned them, gave them meaning to their lives. So much so that they were ready to forego it all the gains of this world, they were ready to forego by serving God and realizing their inner dignity and inner nobility. That was their real life. Even if I don't achieve anything of this world, I cannot degrade myself to a level where I do the things that I used to do formerly. Isn't this what Hussein ibn Ali said? If you have no fear of the hereafter, and you do not have any religion, and do not think that there is an accountability in the hereafter, then be free man in this life of yours. For it does not befit a free man to conduct such actions as the ones you are doing. Have some self-respect and dignity. So he instilled them with this sense of loftier purpose, your dignity, your nobility. This is what the Quran did for them. What happens subsequent to that is, generations start taking birth. Now, that thing that the Quran was saying initially, challenge everything, think about it, analyze it, digest it, internalize it, and if it makes sense, then commit to it wholeheartedly. This is what Ja'far did, and the migrants who fled the persecution in Mecca when they went to Abyssinia. This is what they were involved with. They had internalized the message of the Quran. They had understood God to the extent that they could, and they committed to God. Now for them, there was no moving. They were staunch people. They would not be moved from their positions. What happens after that is, Islam, like any other religion, becomes a formal faith, an organized faith. Children take birth, we indoctrinate them, we say these are the do's, these are the don'ts. This is God who provides for you, who knows what is good for you. If He sees you in a despicable state financially, then He knows best. He has a better plan. Do not question. The religion is sacred. The Quran is the word of God. You dare not question. Now that worked. That worked for centuries. People did not question, but they had this sense in their mind that it all makes sense somehow. It makes sense somehow, I don't know. But it makes sense somehow. But as history unfolds and time progresses, spirituality is chipped away at and ceremonies remain. Until we come to a stage where Muslims are arrogant about their Islam. Why, we don't know. But we are the chosen ones. We are going to go to paradise. Don't ask God anything. What is God saying? What the pulpit says, what the preacher says, what the book says, that is what God is saying. What are the books saying? The books are saying that we cannot make sense of what God is saying, but we know it makes sense in and of itself. Can you see the shift? The Sahaba used to ask the Prophet Muhammad, what does God mean here? We don't understand. And the Prophet would say, this means this. And maybe, and I know I'm going to get in trouble in the whole world by saying this, and maybe the Prophet might have said, I don't even understand what this means at this moment until God tells me. That is how mysterious the content of the Quran was. That is how mysterious it was. The very fact that we find verses and the Mufassirin do not give us any lead from the Prophet. And the very fact that the later Imams have got conflicting statements in elaboration of that verse shows that that verse was not comprehended accurately. Now, even if the Prophet had comprehended it accurately, nobody had asked him. But the Quran says, La ya'lamuha illallah. There are certain verses that none knows save Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran itself says that nobody knows except Allah. So even the blessed Prophet may not have understood the depth of certain verses. So as opposed to that attitude where the Sahaba used to ask the Prophet and say to the Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, what does this mean? And the Prophet asked Gabriel if he didn't understand, what does it mean? And he responded to the attitude, well, we know and we bet our lives on it and we will die for it and we will kill for it, that this makes sense in and of itself. I don't understand, but it makes sense. Now that happened. We all lived through that, not you guys. We guys, we've lived through that. I know how I have defended the Quran. And now I have revised all of my previous sort of beliefs and my positions. Now it makes sense afresh. But I know that we lived through that era where inquiry, the very thing the Quran ignited, was shut off in terms of the Quran itself. So you can see here that something changed radically. The value of the Quran was that it was recited in the marketplace, in front of the Meccans. Their minds were challenged. When their minds were challenged, they rejected the status quo. And then they started a genuine inquiry. Think of the sailing ship, the Quran asks. Think of the cycle of night and day. Think of the precision and the balance that is created within the Ilahun ma'allah. Can there be a God with other God? With God, can there be other gods? لو كان فيهما آلهة إلا الله لفسدتا. Think, O Meccans, had there been a God besides God within the heavens and the earth, they would have been in ruins, for the two gods with their two systems would have been contending for power. There would have been two radically different systems operating and at loggerheads with each other. Think, the very Quran that ignited curiosity in the minds is the very Quran that is to be believed in today without question. Suddenly, religion became sacred. And the meaning of sacred is not this, that if you digest it, understand it, reason with it, then it will take you to your lofty goal. The meaning of sacred was reduced to what? That it is from a divine source, it must not be questioned. You don't have to understand it, just follow what I have interpreted of it. That became the attitude and it governed the Muslim society. I will say this much. In academia, within seminaries, even the finest Muslim Shia Sunni scholars we have produced, none of us dare to challenge the Quran. Do you know why? We are frightened. We are frightened. It's been ingrained in our minds. How can you say that Quran doesn't make sense? Or I want to understand it. When somebody says something, you say it's contrary to the Quran, that's it, you finish their argument. You've cut it and severed it. Even today, in academic circles, I see this. Somebody brings the finest argument that is perfectly rational. Somebody else comes and says, it's contrary to the Quran, that argument loses force and it's cut unless they can find a reconciliation with the Quran. This is what happened. Now, what happened subsequent to that is that as we moved to the western part of the world, I'm talking about my own experiences here and the experiences of all those people at the back and on the right and the not in the middle, that we are sitting here. Our experiences, that when we came here, our generation was still well behaved. When it came to our children, when they got educated at the university, the attitude was what? Question everything. Does it make sense? And then there was a level of arrogance that if it doesn't make sense, then reject it flatly. If it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. Now what happened was that our children started asking us, but this doesn't make sense. Make sense of it to us. And we did not make sense of it ourselves. I know this question came to me, that why somebody very rich, he said, why has God favored me by giving me health, wealth? And that other person who is starving to death and who is dying of cancer. And that guy was feeling totally confused. He said, am I an enemy of God that has given me everything? He doesn't want to test me because the pulpit says if God doesn't test anybody, that means God dislikes that person. So he was genuinely confused. Why am I not being tested? Why is God favoring me and not the other person? These questions arose in the minds, and people are no longer satisfied. Today, we are seeing people disenchanted from religion. Look at the case of Iran today. Now, just look at it. We will not speak about it because we know that we do not want to say anything bad about our Muslim countries. But look at the facts. People have moved away from religion in their troves, and masses have moved away. Why are they moving away from religion? Is religion that bad? But religion has been reduced into do not ask any questions. Do what we have interpreted of religion, otherwise you are not worthy of being called a human. That attitude is no longer sitting well. People today want to understand. In fact, I will say this, that today's world, the people are becoming realigned with the values of Quran. The fundamental value of the Quran was question, analyze, and if you make sense of it, then commit. If you don't, like ikraha fi din, there is no compulsion in religion. People of today are closer to Islam than my generation has ever been. They want to understand. So people today are rejecting Islam. Now you see on YouTube so many atheists. People have become atheists. They don't believe in God. Not only because religious people are not giving a proper interpretation of the religion, but because God Himself, when He speaks, He doesn't make sense. You have to go through this. Difficult debates in this Muharram, we have to go through them. That even God, when He speaks, He doesn't make sense. Why should we believe in such a God who doesn't value a human being's humanity, who is so discriminatory, who has favorites? How can you believe in a God like that? So today we are seeing this struggle in the minds. Majority of the people, I feel, have these questions deep within them, but they do not ask, either because they are so involved in their lives that religion has taken a back seat, or they are totally afraid of asking questions. But genuinely, there is a struggle within the minds. I used to go to Hajj every year before COVID, and there were a group of women, and they said, God really hates women. And I said, God was sensible. So obviously they said, look, stop joking and tell us. I said, why do you think God hates women? He says, look at the laws that we have here. The laws about women and Hajj. How can any kind God give these laws? He doesn't like women. At least they had the audacity to say it out. There are so many who will not say it out, just become disenchanted with God. And then they're in a state of limbo. I have to pray, otherwise He's going to punish me. How many of us think that way? That if I don't pray, God is going to have me. Now I'm going to skip all the peripheral discussions that Maulana has said this, Maulana doesn't know what he's talking about. That is something we've done already, and for which I've got banned. We're going to go straight to the jugular now. The jugular is that Quran doesn't make sense. Now, how many people are honest enough to say that actually I've read the Quran and it doesn't make sense? The Quran does make sense. It is the best thing ever. It is divine. It is brilliant. But yes, it doesn't make sense. Why? Because of our presumptions. We are presuming things about the Quran, and then we are reading the Quran. And due to the fact that we have presumed something in our heads, our reading of the Quran has become skewed and all faulty. How quickly we will say, God is saying this and God is saying that. After this series of talks, hopefully people will say, Quran is saying this. And be cautious of saying, God is saying this. It is the word of God, no doubt. It is the word of God, no doubt. But is God saying everything in there? It makes a huge difference when we understand the Quran accurately. Now, these are the questions that I have come with, and I myself entertain these questions. My own journey began at the age of 40 when I was on Syrian Airlines. Now, I know I've joked about Syrian Airlines. Somebody asked me, what is the greatest irrefutable evidence for the existence of God? I said, Syrian Airlines. Because none can fly that airline, that plane from Heathrow to Syria apart from God. I always used to read Quran on air, not only on Syrian Airline, every time. I read it on every airline. That's my normal practice. So I was reading the Quran going to Syria and then to Iran for the ziyarat in Mashhad and Qum. And came to Surah A'raf. وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى لِمِيقَاتِنَا. And when Moses came for our meeting, وَكَلَّمَهُ رَبُّهُ, and his Lord spoke with him. قَالَ رَبِّي أَرِنِي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْكَ. He said, my Lord, show me yourself, that I may behold you. قَالَ لَن تَرَانِي. He said, you will never see me. وَلَكِنْ انظُرْ إِلَى الْجَبَلِ. Rather, look at the mountain. فَإِنِ اسْتَقَرَّ مَكَانَهُ فَسَوْفَ تَرَانِي. And if it remains stable in its place, then you shall see me. وَلَمَّا تَجَلَّى رَبُّهُ إِلَى الْجَبَلِ جَعَلَهُ دَكَّا وَخَرَّ مُوسَى سَعِقًا. And when his Lord glanced at the mountain, it crumbled and Moses fell unconscious. I read this and I said, Subhanallah, I have never read this. I have read this verse 70, 80 times in my life and I have never read it. The accent is when Moses came for our meeting. And his Lord spoke with him. What is the hour? Where is the hour gone here? And how did his Lord come here now? Can you see that? If I were to tell you, when Zayd came for our meeting and his host spoke with him, you will immediately say that the speaker, is other than the one he is meeting. Wouldn't you? His Lord is other than the one who is saying when he came for our meeting. And then he said to his Lord, he did not say to us. Think about it. And when Moses came for our meeting, or our meeting place, and we spoke with him, wouldn't that be the natural sequence of the verse? When Moses came for our appointed meeting, and we spoke with him, he said to us, "Show me yourself that I may behold you." But the verse is not saying that. The verse is saying when Moses came for the appointed meeting with us, his Lord spoke with him. He said to his Lord, not to us, "Show me yourself that I may look at you." And that's it. That's where my journey started. That there is something else going on here that I have never been attentive to. Now, when a thought like that comes and plagues your mind, you can put it away for some time. So I put it away. I went to the shrine of Imam Rada, and of course, it's my age-old sort of practice and tradition to read the whole Quran during ziyarat and Hajj and Umrah. So I was reading the Quran rapidly, and alhamdulillah, could grasp a lot of it. I looked, and my gazes became transfixed at a portion of the verse. I tried to move on, but I couldn't move on. And God shall take revenge from his enemies and cast them into the pits of hell. And I said, wait, how can God have enemies? God is God, the lofty one, the one beyond enemies and friends. He is too sublime, too lofty to have enemies. And I couldn't move on. After a little while, I just looked over that verse and moved on. Again, another verse came. This happened 7, 8 times until I shut the Quran and I faced the Zari of Imam Rada, and I said to Allah, for the sake of this beloved Imam, explain what is happening, because I no longer understand anything. My whole universe has crumbled now. The whole notion I had of you doesn't make sense anymore, because you are speaking in the Quran, you are saying these things, and you are the lofty one that I've been worshipping. The unrestricted one, the untarnished one, the splendid one, the absolute one, the love of all love, the light of all light. Why is this happening now? You are saying this about your nature? That you're so vengeful, you're so angry? You're not the God that I've worshipped. And I want to worship you as in how you are. I want to be true to you as you are. But I can't reconcile in my mind. That is the beginning of my own personal journey. All those years ago, almost 20 years ago. Now this is what's happening. Why is God so vengeful? Why is He so harsh? You know, I give explanations to people to satisfy them, but I never give them the real explanation. Because you just don't know how to say things. You tell them, look, God is like a parent. Yes? He's going to be harsh to you, but He loves you nonetheless. But when a person is reading those verses, hellfire, zabaniya, aghlalan, molten tar, shajaran min zaqum, every time the skins will burn, I'll replace with another skin. Forever and ever they will abide by in there. They will scream out, and vain shall be their screaming and their pleading. People read that. They are frightened inside. They say, yeah, I worship Him because He'll do all of this to me. I don't know what else to do. Imagine if you say, wait a minute, once you die, you're coming to me. Facing a prospect like that, God, I'll worship you no matter what you say to me. I'm not going to think about anything else. Can you see that? But a free soul will not rest. They say, oh Allah, I've loved you. I have loved you. I have given my all to you. If you want to burn me, who can stop you? But you have incited curiosity in this head now. Do I be true to the humanity, to the human that you have made and the human condition that you've given me? Or should I be a frightened slave? Hasn't your Ali said, it is but a frightened slave who worships you out of fear. It is but a tradesman who worships you out of your reward. A free man worships you for who you are. Oh Lord, don't you want to see me become a free man? Love you and worship you as you are? My mind does not make sense, oh God, make sense. Why does He want everything so meticulously done? And this is not only Islam. Look at the book of Exodus in the Bible. Do it this way. This much meat for me. This much meat for the rest. This much meat for sever, for the beautiful fragrance. This much meat for burnt offering. This much meat is for your precision, utmost precision. So many laws. Make the tabernacle. This many cubits here. This many cubits there. This much gold there. This much silver there, or whatever it was. Such precision. Why do you want things so meticulous? And if we don't do it so meticulously, you will not accept it from us. And this is why our madrasa teach the students, do wudu like this. 1 centimeter above or below, you've had it. That wudu is not accepted. You're going to go to hell. There was an old man in our mosque in Birmingham who used to do wudu from here. Yeah? The Maulana at that time, he said, if he dies, wrap him up in a cloth and throw him away. Don't give him ghusl kafan, don't read his namaz janazah. The Maulana gave that fatwa about that old noble man who was one of the patrons and the founders of our masjid in Birmingham. But I don't blame the Maulana. After reading this, everything so precisely, otherwise God is going to have you. This is the attitude that prevails. Either now the minds suspend all thinking and move away from the very nature that God has created for them, or minds begin to think and reject faith altogether, or become busy in business and in their own lives that religion doesn't really mean anything apart from ceremonies. The other thing I noticed, and I in my own self many years ago, I said, oh God, I'm petrified of you. I'm petrified of the grave. It's going to be dark, it's going to be lonely, it's going to be frightful, munkar and nakir, and I really don't know what's going to happen to me. So then you go to Muhammad and Ali Muhammad and you say, guys, I'm in your wilaya, you help me there. You know, I have nothing to take with me down there. You help me, be by my side. Okay, well, that's just the grave. What is going to come after that on the Qiyamah is going to be even worse. You're going to wish you go back to the grave. You're going to wish to go back to the grave, as horrible and as unbearable as it is. Then you say, Muhammad, Muhammad, I have you there. Please look after me, please. Well, okay, fine. That's not the end of your problems. After you're raised, you're going to have the scales and the questioning by God. Prophet, your family, you got to help me out there. Just tell God, you put in a good word. Then I thought to myself, I said, hold on. It appears as if the Prophet and his family are kinder than God himself. Think about it. Analyze it. It's nonsense. It's crazy in there. This is the life of a faithful. We ask God's help. I know I've been to courts on many occasions, by the way, for speeding things and whatnot. I mean, in my younger days. I would always say, God, help me out here. I don't need any more points. I'll be suspended. After giving points to Mahbub's license and Rafiq's license, I would always use their names and give them the points, earlier on, before I was, obviously enlightened soul. On an occasion in Ramadan, I was called inside the court. And they said, will you take an oath on the Quran or the Bible? I said, no chance. They said he's going to lie today. We know it. It's the month of Ramadan. He can't lie on his holy book. So I said to God, help me here. Help me. And the judge was a kind one. He said, Mr. Hussein, you don't have to prove anything and they don't have any case against you. And he was smiling. He said, you can go. I said, thank God. So I said, Allah, I ask your help wherever I go and wherever I have difficulty. But on the day of Qiyamah, I ask the help of the Prophet and his family against you. Now analyze it. Seriously. When I want to face the mullahs, I ask the help of God. That was a joke, right? You didn't get it. Salawat. You see, when I face a problem, I seek help from God. I say, Allah, be with me. Help me out. Soften their hearts. Or downright defeat them or make them quite stupid at this occasion. Whatever, these are the prayers we make with God, don't we? But on the day of Qiyamah, God is the enemy. Think about it. Here, that guy is the tyrant who I'm going to face. There, who's the tyrant where the Prophet and his family are going to help me? It's all a big mess in there. Prophet, help me against God. You see that? God, when you are my God, why do I need to ask the Prophet to help me against you? Something is terribly, terribly wrong. This is the question that people ask me. Why is God so weak that He needs my worship to reconfirm and reaffirm His authority? Pray to me. Call me Allah. La sharika lak. Why is He so weak that He needs me to constantly say, I'm going to pray to you, I'm going to be obedient to you, I'm going to reject all other gods. And then He says in the Quran, I am needless. A needless God does not behave like this. It all makes sense. And that's what we need to do. We need to make sense of it. But we need to present the problem first. Yes? So don't get the wrong end of the stick. Then the question comes, He knows everything, doesn't He? Yes, He knows everything. He knows whatever's going to happen. Yes, He knows whatever's going to happen. Well, why did He create me? Well, if He knows what is going to happen, why has He created me? And then you say that He is kinder than the kindest mother. Which kind mother would bring a child into this world knowing the fate of that child will be such a miserable fate? Which kind of mother would create something as horrible as death? Look at how we suffer at the thought of death. Which kind of mother would want to kill her children and then cause pain to the loved ones around her, or around the dying person? And then which kind of mother would have the heart to burn her children in hell, and that too forever? How can that make sense to anybody? Of course, we Maulana then become busy, and then you pay us for explaining how the irreconcilable reconciles properly and perfectly, and you're happy. And nothing makes sense. Something is very wrong here. Now you look at the story of Adam, the real Adam. He's an innocent child, right? Think about this poor innocent man, Adam. Poor guy. He's a childlike innocent man. He's going about his business in the garden, eating fruits and whatever. And somebody says, that's the tree. If you eat from there, you will become an ever-living angel. He said, okay, I'll eat from it. You expect a child to do that, don't you? The poor guy went and ate whatever he ate. And look at how he suffered. If you read the story of Adam and Hawa, you will cry. Which God can see Adam suffer like this? He is just a child. Forgive him. Can you see this? And if he has eaten of the fruit and you knew, I'm just saying to God, according to the definition, you knew everything. So before you created him, you should have known that he's going to eat from that tree. Well, if you can create Adam and all the gardens, why didn't you make that tree invisible to him? Why didn't you make it invisible? And then forget Adam, I'm suffering here because of Adam now. And you're suffering listening to me. Just because of one bite? Does that make sense to anybody that Adam takes one bite and this is what happens? I don't know why you're laughing. You should be sad. Why are you laughing? And then you unleash a monster-like demon, shaitan, upon our heads. He is telling you, God, I am going to misguide him and all his progeny, and none of them are going to be obedient and grateful. And you say, okay. And he says, give me life till the day of Qiyamah. And you say, okay, I'll give you life till the day of Qiyamah. Misguide them all, and I will send them all to hell with you. How does that make sense? There's a demon, a monster, who is telling you he's going to take us all into hell. Majority of us, that's what Shaitan said, inshallah, he's not going to be successful. And you say to him, okay, I'll let you live till the day of Qiyamah. Take as many of them as you want to hell with you. I'll fill the hell. It has 7 doors, and each door has a particular quota. You will fill them all. How does that make sense to anybody? God has created Adam. He's saying the progeny of Adam will go to hell. Each door has a quota, and each door will get its quota. You take them in there. God, what sort of a God are you? Don't get baffled. And I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for saying all these things. But what I'm trying to tell you here is that if not today, then by tomorrow, if not you, your children are going to entertain these questions. These are the pressing issues that are going to face. The very problem is not with what the mullah is saying. It's easy to reject the mullah and their fatwas. Do wudu like this, or else namaz is batil. Forget all that. That's just child's play. There is a huge problem here. The problem is one of lack of understanding of what religion really is, of what God is saying and what the Quran is saying to us. On the one hand, you have 2 trillion galaxies. That's just a minute estimation right now. It's going to be many more. This is just one portion that we are looking at the universe. Our 3-dimensional, 4-dimensional universe. We're saying that 2 trillion galaxies. Can you imagine in each galaxy how many stars? Can you imagine? 2 trillion times 200 million each. That's the stars. Times 200 times 50, 60 planets. Can you imagine hundreds of trillions there? In a God who has created hundreds of trillions of things in the visible universe, an earth that you can't even locate as a speck of dust within Milky Way, upon that is a human being that is not even a microscopic creature. There is a God who is waiting to put him inside hell. And who is so obsessed with you, pray to me or I'm going to kill you. I'm going to fill you in hell, fill the hell with you, and going to burn you forever and for all eternity. How can such a God make sense? How does anybody make sense of such a God? Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu ilayh. The Prophet appears to be much kinder than the God we worship. The Prophet is told, don't pray for this munafiqeen in the Quran. Even if you pray for them, God is never going to forgive them. The poor Prophet is saying, if only God were to forgive them, I would have prayed for all of them again and again so that God forgives them. Prophet appears to be kinder than God. Can you see? There is something quite wrong here. Something is not right. Now, when I talk about the God of love, people are appealed. Their hearts just flow. And I know this. The spiritual message that God is splendid. He is beautiful. He is the blind lover. He is the forgiver of one and all. But it is my embarrassment from God that doesn't allow me to forgive myself. People are moved by this message. People love this message when you say there is a divine purpose here. There is such a profound purpose, such a deep purpose in life. The people say, yes, that makes sense. That actually makes sense. And that's the God I want to belong to. And that's the message I want. And that's the purposeful life I want to lead and make something of it. But why does it not align with the religion? Can you see that? Why is it not aligning with the religion? Why is it a different reading of religion? It's not the different reading of religion. That is the only reading of religion. What is not making sense is what your assumptions have done to you. What we have presumed in our heads, that's what skewed everything up. The religion makes perfect sense. The God that we worship is the most beautiful, splendid, grand, glorious God. The one that we belong to. The one who, even if He burns us, we will burn with pride that I belong to you. And I burn to ashes in your love. As Ali said, "Oh Allah, since I have known you, I have loved you. And now, if you were to fling me in hell, I will tell the inhabitants of hell and those who burn me and chastise me that I am in love with the one who burns me herein. That is the real message of religion, that God is colorless, He is beautiful, He is genderless. He doesn't want to keep His paradise, He wants to give it to you. But what He has for you waiting is well beyond paradise. We have put the veils of paradise and hell upon our faces. Those little sweets, green and blue and red colors that were given to little children to entice them. We are still being enticed at the ripe old age by paradise and hell. The truth is loftier, is beyond. Hell is within hell, and paradise is within paradise, and God is beyond God. This is what we need to understand very, very carefully. So in these talks, we will discuss about who is God. Who is talking in the Quran? What is the distinction between the notion God and the notion Lord? What is the meaning of we, he, and I inside the Quran? We will explore these things, but to an extent that is manageable and that does not confuse. What is the story with Adam? Why did he come here? What is the nature of this world according to the Quran? What is the world hereafter, world and universe connection? What is free will? What is destined? How are we supposed to progress? What are all these jinns and all these angels? What are they according to the Quran? The picture is so deep, it is so phenomenally mind-blowing that if we step in this journey, it is something that will continue for the rest of our lives. But the life will never be the same again. So this is the matrix moment now. Tomorrow there'll be green and blue pills outside. Which colors were they? Red and green. Because it's Muharram, we'll play black and white. Yeah? Black one, go for the mystery. White one, come here and still go for the mystery. Whoever attends will be subjected to it anyway, so that we can make sense about our life and about our world. And then when we read the Quran, hopefully the experience will never be the same again. It'll be a very, very different experience. Now, as a proof that God is that supreme, beautiful, untarnished God, we come to the Master whose martyrdom we gather to commemorate. Look at his words. أنت ثقتي في كل حالي ولا معبود سواك. You're the one I rely upon in every state. None is worthy of worship save you. These are his prayers as he drinks from the blades that cut him, as his heart is torn into pieces, as his veins and arteries ooze blood. We see a radiance upon his face. We see the reception of God. We see a smile upon his lips. We see him giving himself over to God. Such a glorious giving. A blade penetrates through his thirsty neck. His lips move in the eulogy of God. What God has Hussein found? What God is this heart involved with? That his enemies are before him and he forgives them. That his son is gone from him and he says, God has relieved you of the trials of this earth. His sister faces captivity and he says to her, lose not your patience in the sight of tribulations. Have trust in God. What God has Hussein found? That is the true God. And that is the religion of his grandfather. And that is the message of the Quran. The Prophet and his children, the Imams, said this is the word of God, and they understood it accurately. On the day of Ashura, and I go towards the narrative, he placed the Quran upon his head. This is how he revered the Quran as the word of God. He said, with this Quran upon my head, is there between the east and the west of the earth a grandson of your prophet alive? I beseech you for the sake of this Quran. In 60 AH, Muawiyah dies. Yazid dispatches a letter to his governor, Walid bin Utbah, who was his cousin, to seek the oath of allegiance from Imam Hussein. Now Imam Hussein takes his family and he says, look, I fear for the worst. It's the depth of the night. Come to my aid if you feel any danger upon my life. Walid reads the content of the letter that Muawiyah has died. And Imam Hussein pronounces the words of istirja. He said, but the last of the letter says that Yazid, as the caliph of the time, demands your allegiance, oath of allegiance. Imam Hussein said, postpone this request of yours. Ask it of me in the light of the day, for that is more befitting. Walid said, indeed, go back to your home. Marwan is there, also related. He said, Walid, put him to death. You will not find him again. Imam Hussein enraged. He said, how dare you speak to me and of my death? Now here the Dhakirin, they add that the lion of God, the son of his lion, walks into the office. And Walid and Marwan are startled. They step away from their seats. They see the gallant, the warrior Abbas ibn Ali. Imam Hussein retreats. He comes back home. And Zainab asks, I narrate from the Dhakirin, why did he summon you? And he said, it is no longer safe for us to stay within Medina. She understands well that her apprehensions and her fears were not unfounded. And then Hussein may not be with her for long. Imam comes to the grave of his grandfather. And he said, oh grandfather, nothing is dearer to me than to stay next to you. But what am I to do when allegiance is demanded of me for a caliph such as Yazid? Oh grandfather, alas, I will have to leave. Hussein, in his grieving state, falls asleep and he sees a dream. And his grandfather says, oh Hussein, come to me. I await you. See what God has prepared for you. He said, grandfather, call me to you. Relieve me of the burdens of this life. And the Prophet said, oh Hussein, indeed you shall come to me step by step. But the road ahead is a very difficult road for you. I await you nonetheless.